Imagine you're trapped. Your leg is tangled in a wire fence. Every movement tightens it a little more. The pain sharpens. Your breathing grows faster. Every sound in the distance feels like a warning you can't ignore. Then something appears. A human. For millions of years, your survival rule has been simple. When humans come close, you don't wait, you run. But this time, something is different. The human doesn't approach aggressively. They don't chase you. They kneel down slowly, careful not to make sudden movements. Step by step, they cut through the wire wrapped around your leg. Then they stop. They quietly move away. The pressure is gone. You're free. You bolt into the forest. No hesitation, no looking back, just escape. Now, here's the question. In that moment, what did your mind actually register? Did you recognize that someone had just helped you? Or did your brain simply update one thing? The danger is over. Survive. For humans, the difference feels obvious. We naturally search for intention behind other people's actions. If someone pulls you from deep water, you don't just remember what happened, you immediately ask why. You assume purpose. You assume intent. Our brains are constantly trying to answer one question. Why did they do that? But for many wild animals, survival doesn't require that second layer of interpretation. It requires speed. A decision made 1 second too late can cost everything. Take a gazelle on the savannah. If something large moves toward it, there is no time to evaluate intention. The only calculation that matters is simple. How close is it? How dangerous is it? Most of the time, that reaction turns out to be unnecessary. The wind shifts the grass. Another animal passes by. But evolution doesn't care how often you're right. It only cares about the one mistake you don't survive. Over millions of years, natural selection didn't favor animals that could correctly interpret good intentions. It favored animals that reacted quickly enough to avoid bad outcomes. That's why rescue situations often look so confusing from a human perspective. A bird tangled in fishing line doesn't experience compassion. It experiences restraint, pressure, hands it cannot understand. Every instinct tells it to do one thing: break free. To survive, it must treat anything holding it down as a potential threat, even if that thing is what ultimately saves its life. And that creates a strange contradiction. To save a wild animal, humans often have to become, at least for a few moments, the most frightening thing in its world. At least from the animal's point of view. But that raises a deeper question. If survival instinct is so dominant, why do some animals later behave differently around certain humans? And what, if anything, are they actually remembering? To understand why a rescued animal often disappears without hesitation, we need to slow down for a moment and look at the world the way it might actually feel from the inside. Not as a story, but as a constant pressure to survive. Imagine living in a world where almost nothing is neutral. A sound in the grass isn't just a sound. It's either nothing or something that can kill you. A shadow isn't just a trick of the light. It's either harmless or hiding danger. There is rarely time to be curious first and correct yourself later. Because in the wild, being wrong, even once, can be enough. So most animals don't evolve to carefully interpret every situation. They evolve to make fast decisions. A seal caught in a fishing net doesn't think in terms of rescue or intention. It feels something tightening around its body. It sees large shapes approaching from above the water. It hears unfamiliar noise drawing closer. Everything it has ever learned points toward one conclusion. Don't stay still. Don't trust the pressure. Get away. So when humans arrive to help, what the animal experiences isn't the idea of rescue. It's a situation full of restraint it cannot understand. Hands holding, tools cutting, bodies blocking escape. Not because the humans are dangerous, but because the animal has no concept of safe restraint. There is only restraint. And in nature, restraint often means danger. That's why moments we experience as compassion can look, from the outside, like chaos. A bird flapping violently while someone untangles fishing line. A deer struggling harder as rescuers try to free it. A seal twisting under careful human control. From our perspective, these are signs of stress during a rescue. From the animal's perspective, they're simply the only strategy that has ever increased its chances of survival. Fight. Break free. Escape. Then, suddenly, it ends. The pressure disappears. The humans step back. The world opens again. And the animal leaves. Fast. Not because it is ungrateful. Not because it misunderstood what happened. But because, for many wild animals, Survival leaves little room for reflection in that moment. There is no pause to interpret intentions, only a shift from immediate danger to escape. This is why the question humans often ask, why didn't it seem thankful? Which may be built on a misunderstanding, because gratitude assumes something the animal may never have formed in the first place. A story about intention. But in the wild, survival doesn't depend on stories. It depends on outcomes. Was the situation dangerous? Is it safe enough to leave? That's often all the brain needs to answer. Over time, this way of processing the world becomes remarkably efficient. It keeps animals alive in environments where hesitation is more costly than false alarms. So even when humans intervene with care, patience, and precision, the experience may still be stored in the animal's memory as something much simpler. That situation was intense. That situation ended. I survived. Nothing more is required for that experience to shape future behavior. But it leaves us with an uncomfortable gap, because from our perspective, the rescue feels deeply meaningful. From the animals, it may simply be another event in a life built around surviving the next one. And that raises a question we still can't fully answer. If animals don't interpret rescue as kindness, what exactly do they remember when they encounter us again? There is a moment in wildlife research that keeps appearing again and again, and each time, it challenges what people expect. A wild animal encounters a human once. Then, years pass. No repeated training, no domestication, no routine contact. Just a single encounter. And yet, something changes. Not dramatically, but in behavior. A little more hesitation, a little more avoidance, or sometimes an unexpected calm. So, scientists began asking a simple question. What exactly did the animal remember? The crows that didn't forget a face. One of the clearest examples comes from research on wild crows. Researchers captured and released crows while wearing distinctive masks. The goal wasn't to study emotion. It was simply to see whether the birds remembered individual people. They did. Years later, those same masks still triggered alarm calls, avoidance, and even mobbing behavior. More surprising still, young crows that had never been captured also learned to react after observing older birds. The memory wasn't just individual. It spread socially, without language, without teaching in any human sense. Suddenly, the question became more specific. The crows weren't remembering humans. They were remembering particular humans. Recognition doesn't always mean understanding. Recognition isn't unique to crows. Across many species, researchers have found evidence that animals can distinguish between individual humans using faces, voices, scent, or repeated experiences. In some wildlife rescue situations, veterinarians and field researchers have also reported that animals sometimes appear less reactive during later encounters with familiar people. That doesn't necessarily mean the animal understands it was being helped. It may simply mean the situation has become more predictable, and that distinction matters. Dolphins and long-term memory. Dolphins take memory to another level. Each dolphin develops a unique signature whistle, something remarkably similar to an individual name. Researchers have found that dolphins can recognize those whistles even after many years apart. The point isn't that dolphins understand human kindness. It's that some animals can retain highly specific social memories over extraordinary lengths of time. If evolution benefits from remembering important individuals, forgetting them would be costly. But here's where the mystery deepens. At first glance, all of this seems to point toward an obvious conclusion. Animals remember humans. But remembering someone isn't the same as understanding them. Those are two very different cognitive processes. One is simply, this individual was part of that experience. The other is far more complex. This individual intended to help me. That second conclusion is exactly where scientists become cautious, because intention is much harder to demonstrate than recognition. The simpler explanation, across species, one pattern appears again and again. Animals become remarkably good at tracking consistency, not morality, not gratitude, not kindness, patterns. This individual predicts food. That individual predicts danger. This voice predicts safety. That place predicts risk. Over time, the brain compresses those experiences into something extraordinarily useful. Prediction. Not because prediction is more meaningful, because it's more useful. The quiet shift no one notices, This is why behavioral change rarely looks dramatic. There isn't a single moment when fear suddenly becomes trust. Instead, the reaction becomes slightly less intense. The distance of avoidance grows a little shorter. The uncertainty begins to fade. Eventually, the animal may stop treating that particular human as completely unpredictable. That's a subtle change. But in the wild, subtle changes can matter. And that leads to a harder question. Because if animals aren't building stories about kindness, if they aren't interpreting human intentions the way we do, then what are we actually seeing in those moments of recognition? And why does it feel so much like understanding when it may simply be prediction becoming more accurate over time? There's a reason wildlife rescue videos almost always feel the same. Something gets trapped, something suffers. Humans intervene, the animal escapes, and then there's that final moment. A whale circles a rescue boat. A deer pauses at the edge of the forest. A fox looks back once before disappearing. Almost instantly, the comments appear. It knows. It's saying thank you. It understood. It's a comforting story. But is it necessarily the right one? The problem isn't the animal. The real question may not be what the animal is doing. It's what our own minds are doing. Because whenever we see behavior without a clear explanation, our brains naturally begin searching for one. We connect actions to intentions. We turn coincidence into purpose. We transform behavior into meaning. Not because we're irrational, because that's how human social cognition works. The whale that might not be saying anything at all. Take the whale circling a rescue boat. It looks deliberate. It feels meaningful. But several explanations could fit the same behavior. The whale may be reorienting after stress, recovering from exhaustion, or simply checking its surroundings before continuing on. None of those possibilities require an intention toward humans. Yet visually, they can look almost identical. That's the challenge. The story we experience isn't always a story we can verify. What science can say and what it can't. This is why scientists are cautious with words like gratitude, compassion, or understanding. Not because animals are incapable of rich inner lives, but because those words make specific claims about mental states we cannot directly observe. Behavior can be measured. Recognition can be tested. Memory can be studied. But subjective meaning remains far more difficult to access. That doesn't mean it isn't there, only that science cannot confidently measure it. So what is actually happening? Perhaps something much simpler. A trapped animal is freed. The struggle ends. The immediate threat disappears. Life continues. No story is required. The part we rarely notice. Humans are natural meaning makers. When an explanation is missing, we instinctively fill the gap with intention. That's why a pause, a glance, or a circle around a rescue boat can feel deeply personal, even when the evidence cannot tell us what the animal was actually experiencing. In many ways, those moments become a reflection of us, as much as they are a reflection of the animal. But here's the real question. Maybe the most interesting question isn't, do animals understand human kindness? Maybe it's this. Why do humans need them to? Because that question reveals something profound about our own minds, not just theirs. Final thought. Perhaps the most honest answer is also the simplest. Maybe the animal never understands what we intended. Maybe it never forms a story about kindness. Maybe it simply remembers that it survived. And yet, that doesn't make the rescue any less meaningful, because compassion doesn't require recognition. It doesn't depend on gratitude. Sometimes, saving a life is enough. If this video changed the way you think about animal behavior, I'd love to hear your perspective. Do you think wild animals truly understand human help? Or are we seeing the world through a very human lens? Leave your thoughts in the comments. I read every one. And if you're curious about the hidden psychology of intelligence, survival, and consciousness in nature, subscribe. Because the next story asks an even stranger question.